Hello, I'm Stephen Asma, and today's episode is a live Chinwag Paul and I recorded from Town Hall in Seattle. It's a really great venue, and we want to thank Town Hall for welcoming us and our Chinwag fans. Some of our fans are a little wild and crazy, and so we really appreciate some of these venues taking them on. It's not like a Grateful Dead show, but it's kind of close. So today we're talking cryptids, but not just any cryptids. These are creatures from the Pacific Northwest in particular. So let's get into it.
Ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. I have 3 moves on that thing. That's it. Tops, maybe 4. I have to beat the crap out of that thing to get it to make a sound. My style, beating the crap out of a theremin.
You're the Hendrix of the theremin.
Does anybody here actually play this thing? Wow, nobody. Holy shit. So in theory, I'm good at that.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking at that. Okay.
They don't know.
So nobody knows any different and knows that I have no idea what the hell I'm doing on that thing.
It's genius what we're pulling off here.
That's what genius is. Fooling everybody as much as you can. Well, this is lovely to be in Seattle.
Welcome to the Chinwag.
It's great. I used to live here in, yes? Yes.
They're like, no.
I know, really? I did. Whoever's out there saying no. I did for about 3 years, in the late 80s, early 90s. And it's lovely to be back. I don't know why I left. Big mistake.
You started the grunge movement, didn't you?
I did single-handedly started the grunge movement. So I have that feather in my cap. But it's lovely to be back. It's particularly lovely, I just want to say quickly, to be here in this place because my friend, Ware Harmon, this is the house that Ware built. And he was a lovely, lovely man. And I wish I had gotten my butt out here sooner to appear here, but we're here now. And I can definitely feel Ware's spirit. And I think he would enjoy the nonsense that's about to be foisted on you people. Very much so. I think he would very much appreciate what's about to happen to all of you. Who's actually listened to the podcast?
All right. It's good.
Like so everybody else is in for a shock.
Yeah. Well, they're already shocked. We came out and played a fucking theremin.
Yeah, what the fuck was that? He's a philosophy professor. And yeah, oh wow.
Thank
you.
Really? All the philosophers here represent.
But he plays, he's amazing. He's amazing with the guitar.
Very kind, sir.
Yes,
Very
indeed.
kind.
So this is the Chinwag. You want to explain what the hell this is?
Yeah, those of you who've heard this will know that Paul and I are basically going to wander all over the place. We do have a topic, but we're not going to stay on it. And you won't really learn anything.
We're
not capable. You won't be better off by this process. You won't be
You won't learn anything.
Improved. Yeah.
You won't be a better person.
That's right.
Nothing.
But it's a British slang, chinwag, which just means like having a chat. And so we basically are interested in all this paranormal stuff and weird science and the edge of the known.
That's right.
So
uncanny.
Tonight we're going to regale you with regional cryptids.
That's right. Yeah. What is a cryptid, Steve? Define a cryptid,
Paul,
Professor.
The cryptid
thank you.
is, cryptos is the Greek, which means hidden or secret. And the cryptozoology is the study of the hidden or secret animals. And so cryptids are secret or hidden animals.
Fantastic. In other words, we're going to talk about regional ones, specifically Pacific Northwest, Washington State, kind of.
Yeah.
Right? Sort of.
We did research.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we actually did research.
Look, I have research, people. Look at this. I have a lot of research, guys. And normally, you know, I mean, the most famous one up here is the Sasquatch.
Yes.
Yeah. But we're not going to talk about Sasquatch.
That would be too easy.
That would be way too easy. We're going to talk about some other bizarre things that are peculiar to this region. And I'm going to let you start, Steve, and see. I'm not even sure what you're going to be talking about. So I'd like to hear what you have.
I'm going to surprise you.
Yes,
okay.
please do.
There are these, like, in addition to Bigfoot, there's stuff that we thought was fabulous or perhaps just folklore, and it turned out to be true. Like the giant squid is one of those examples. The other day I was looking at the cynocephalus, which is the dog-headed man, woman, and child of the ancient world.
That's not real, though.
Well, here's the thing. Hear me out. There is, in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, a Saint Christopher who is a cynocephalus, who is a dog-headed saint.
What?
Yes.
Why?
I'm not sure, but
So he's the patron saint of dog-headed people?
Yes,
Like
he is.
Why do we need a dog-headed saint?
he basically converted to Christianity when he got the Holy Spirit. He was able to then speak in the language, and he started to convert people. The Romans weren't having it. They arrested him. They tried to cut his head off. They couldn't do it.
I don't understand why he's dog-headed. I mean, but that's really bizarre. I had no idea. That's really strange.
Well, here's the thing. There's one way to think of it is that people around the Mediterranean were actually encountering baboons or mandrills. And they were like, that looks like a dude, but it's
And a dog.
And a dog.
Oh, interesting.
And so a lot of times these cryptids are based on real things, but then they get sort of elaborated and, they're extrapolated on.
I see.
Whatever.
Okay, cool.
But the one I want to hit you with here is something that comes from the Pacific Northwest, but you'll see it all over the place, and that is the black-eyed children. Has anyone heard of the black-eyed children?
Fantastic.
Wow.
Great.
Amazing. Okay.
This is great. You people are not going to get prepared to get fucking slammed in the head with the black-eyed children. Wait.
Okay.
But this, so I mean, it's you encounter these things here, but they kind of pop up all over the place.
Yeah,
too.
you never know where the black-eyed children are going to pop up.
Okay, all right. What does this mean, black-eyed children?
Okay, so you'll be just heading down the road and you look over and there'll be like two of them hitchhiking, or you'll be riding through you're riding through a neighborhood and you'll look over and there'll be a couple of them just on somebody's doorstep, looking at you.
What? Okay.
They're small.
And what does it mean, black-eyed? What does that mean?
Their eyes are completely blackened over, like the sclera. Is it the sclera? Is that the word I'm looking for?
I think so. Yeah.
So it's just all black, and apparently they don't.
So there's no white to the eye.
Right,
That's just
no whites.
completely black. Yeah. Okay.
And they just kind of stare at you, and they don't do anything bad. They just kind of look at you, and then they disappear.
Like Children of the Corn kind of shit.
Exactly.
And so people have there's actually verified, people have claimed to have seen these things?
Well, yes, they have, but...
Right, but it is a thing people have said, I've seen these things.
Yeah.
It's not just like folklore, like somebody has actually claimed to have seen these things.
People have claimed to see them. That doesn't mean that they've actually seen them.
And then they don't do much. They just stare at you.
I mean, it raises this question of like, why are monstrous kids so creepy? Like what... They're not really like hunting you down or whatever, but there are these like sort of cases where the kids are just like unnerving and uncanny. And so I thought I'd just sort of like tell you a little bit about creepiness, because there's a recent study on creepiness which says that, I know this sounds amazing, but they basically interviewed like 15...
Who's doing the studies in creepiness?
Some friends of
like
mine.
Some institute in like Norway or something?
Yes.
Yeah, probably. I want to go do a fucking study in creeping. Can I be a part of it? They're going to measure my level of creepiness? Interesting.
Well, one thing they found very important is that people who are creepy don't know that they're creepy.
Wow, that's kind of sad too, though.
It is.
Really? So are they literally getting people in? They like putting an ad in the paper that says, "Are you creepy? Come to our institute in Stockholm and we'll test your creepiness."
They're showing, they got 1,500 people, subjects, and they showed them all these people pictures, and they asked which ones are creepy. Women are very good at identifying creepiness, and it's mostly men who are creepy.
That kind of scans. That makes sense. But wait a second. So what kind of pictures are they showing them? Like of what? Of like it's like a bat, and then it's like, and then it's like a person.
I think it's mostly people. Like they're really just interested in knowing if people are creepy.
Like famous people.
It could be famous. I don't know if you're in the friggin' study,
I'm not
man.
asking if I'm in the thing. I'm just saying, like, I'm going to assume I'm not in the thing. That'd be interesting. Oh, boy. I don't want to know whether I'm in the thing or not. Or is it just like random people? It would almost seem like that's better if it's just a random selection of people rather than famous people.
I think it's random people, and also they were sort of studying places. Like, does this dark alley, look creepy? Does this, they were looking at locations too. But what they find is that, like, being afraid of something is obvious. You want to run away. It's scary. And then there's sort of stability and security. It seems safe. But creepiness is in the middle. It's like it makes you attend and be more vigilant in case this person is trouble. Basically.
Wow. So it's a kind of uncanny feeling.
Yeah.
It's that sort of uneasy feeling that you get. Interesting. That's interesting because a lot of these things we're talking about have that quality rather than like something else to them.
Those kids with black eyes.
The black-eyed kids appearing.
Yeah.
Okay. So the black-eyed kids appear. This is something interesting to me. Do we know how far back this goes or anything that people have been seeing black-eyed children? I mean, is this like the 19th century?
Just the 90s, the 1990s.
Starting in the 1990s.
Yeah.
Okay. Jesus. So is there any, I'm calling bullshit on the black-eyed children.
Hold on.
Sorry. This is interesting. Is there some explanation that it's like some sort of like there was a nuclear power meltdown or something
Let
like that?
me consult the notes here. Here we go.
Okay.
Extraterrestrials who could be studying us.
Okay.
The other alternative is vampire children, ghosts, and then just bullshit. Yeah, pranksters.
Yeah. I go with bullshit. But it's interesting because to me, I go, okay, this is that weird area where popular culture seems to be influencing what we're seeing. Because you say 1990s, and I go, right. That's when people start like putting the black contact lenses in kids' eyes in movies and stuff. Seriously. Yes. Like that's when you start seeing that. Yeah. So it becomes that weird symbiosis between like popular culture. I was reading a thing recently, because this is what I do, about Betty and Barney Hill, the first sort of alien abductees. And that a lot of what Betty, I guess, more than Barney, this is a famous abduction case. It's the first alien abduction case.
1950s, right? Yeah.
I think the 60s, maybe.
Oh, was it?
I think like mid-60s or something, early 60s. And it's a couple that they had missing time. And they in New Hampshire, they were driving, and all of a sudden they were somewhere else on the road, and they'd lost a few hours, and they went home, and then gradually over time they started remembering more and more about being taken onto a spaceship and being messed with by these aliens that then become the sort of template for the kinds of aliens that we associate this stuff
grays
with.
with the big eyes,
the big heads and the big eyes, black eyes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
See, proof. But that what they then talk about gets subsumed by popular culture and then becomes this thing that everybody starts thinking.
Yes.
So you can't delineate like what they're sort of absorbing from the culture and what they're not. And even I think in that instance, Betty Hill had a kind of interest in science fiction movies. Not huge, but enough that she was sort of
she could have absorbed it,
maybe,
and then projected it on it. But I mean, what's interesting is you could still be having a really weird experience, and then you're just using the kind of imagery and narratives that you have ready to hand.
Fit something, right?
And then putting that on it.
That's interesting. So, but the black-eyed children, this thing sounds to me like, what was it, Slender Man and all that stuff?
It's a lot like Slender Man, who's also real.
Okay. But what happened to Slender Man? He kind of vanished. It was like a thing for a while, and now Slender Man's gone.
I think that's that creepypasta
it
website,
is the creepypasta
right? Where
he
emerged, and then some kid tried to kill another kid based on Slender Man's idea.
There was a whole thing that happened with that. Yeah, so I guess that put Slender Man to bed.
Well, you'd think, but some people think that you can kind of bring him into existence. This is the Tulpa idea that we've talked about before.
That's right. That you can imagine him into existence. Oh, interesting.
And I mean, we're not endorsing any of this, obviously, but it's fascinating. Why do people believe this stuff? Why are they drawn to it? Why has it become so popular such that you would even commit violence and stuff based on it. The imagination gone
Yeah.
wild.
The black-eyed children thing that you're talking about reminds me of this. There's a whole other sort of thing called the melon heads.
Oh, yeah.
Which is mostly my home state of Connecticut, the great and mighty state of Connecticut, is where the melon heads supposedly sort of are concentrated. And it's a similar thing with sort of uncanny children.
What do they look like exactly?
Oh, they have heads like melons, and they do. That's what it is. But it's interesting because it really, that one has a real sense of kind of, you know, and the rise of that seems to kind of come into being in sort of the 50s with kind of like the sort of growth of kind of suburban sort of life, and there's this sense of kind of, it almost seems like this kind of othering of people and making sort of outsiders of people who don't fit into your
Anybody who's
community kind of
different
thing.
gets kind of like
gets called a melonhead
demonized or
and
whatever.
stuff. Yeah, exactly. But this reminds me of that, like just creepy children kind of thing is strange.
I think also with creepy children, I think you're supposed. This is the real chinwag. You're supposed to like children. You know, they're like symbol. Okay, hear me out.
You don't have to.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like some of them are assholes, and
Some of them are assholes.
Some are assholes.
Some children are assholes.
But you're not allowed to really dislike them unless you get an opportunity, like in a horror genre. Then you can like vent all that aggression on these punks.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm just.
Did you just come up with this theory on your own?
I think it's
wow, that's
influenced by
nuts.
Freud.
Yeah, okay.
What do you got for us?
I have, what do I have? I have one. This is a local creature. This is also a Washington state creature, but this is a good one. And if you will indulge me, you're already indulging me, believe me.
Yeah, by showing
What
up.
do I mean, will you indulge me? Jesus Christ. I've got everybody trapped here listening to this crap. That's unbelievable, unbelievable. But this is mine, and I'm going to read you, if you don't mind, I'm going to read you a fantastic article that I found that will talk about this particular Washington state cryptid. April 24th, 1994. This is an article from the Tacoma News Tribune of April 24th, 1994. Byline C.R. Roberts. Mount Rainier area youth has close encounter in the foothills. Here we go. The engine died and the dashboard lights fell dark, although he hadn't applied his brakes. The pickup truck he was driving stopped suddenly, abruptly, square in the middle of the road there between the edge of the forest and the scrubby, clear-cut field. His headlights cut a hole through the night. He sat wondering what was wrong. Then he saw the feet descending, bird feet, claw feet. Then the legs, the torso, the chest, and the wings folded, attached to the back of broad shoulders, then the head, and then, oh, that face. This fucking guy is unbelievable who wrote this. The creature 9 feet tall, 30 feet away, blue-tinted fur, yellowish eyes, tufted ears, and sharp, straight teeth. With a dust-raising thud, it landed. Brian Canfield, 18, held tight to the steering wheel. He was alone on his way home from Buckley to the isolated settlement of Camp 1, located in the Mount Rainier foothills. At 9:30 a week ago Saturday night. He doesn't drink, he doesn't take drugs. He's a high school senior known locally as an average, normal kid. It was standing there staring at me like it was resting, like it didn't know what to think, Canfield says. I was scared. It raised the hair on me. I didn't feel threatened, I just felt out of place. We were sitting in a camper outside the Canfield home a few days after the encounter. I'd heard Brian's story from a neighbor and I'd asked for an interview. He is no fan of heavy metal music. And he's never played Dungeons and Dragons. He's never seen a UFO. He remains baffled by what he saw. Its eyes were yellow and shaped like a piece of pie. With pupils like a half moon, the mouth was pretty big. White teeth, no fangs, the face like a wolf, he says. Could he smell anything? Could he hear anything? I ask him, close his eyes and remember, he can hear the wind. He smells gasoline. He's having trouble with his carburetor. It's looking right at me like a deep stare, like right through me. It's standing perfectly still. It stood for how long? A few minutes, perhaps. Several minutes. Then its fingers twitched and its wings began to unfold. Those wings were as wide as the road. It turned its head and it looked back at me and started flapping its wings, Canfield says. Then it rose slowly and this is not Canfield anymore. Then it rose slowly. And so great was the turbulence, the truck began to rock and sway. Slowly, the creature flew off in the direction of Mount Rainier. A few minutes later, the truck just started, Canfield says. I took off as fast as I could. He drove home. I just flew in the house. I woke my mom and dad up. I told my dad to grab a gun and a camera and come with me. While he was getting dressed, I told them what happened. I almost couldn't breathe. I could tell something was wrong. The way he ran in, says his mother, Sandra. He said, really, I got to talk to you. We just got to talk. They went into the living room. He was shaking. His mouth was dry. He was pale. His hair was still standing on end, Sandra says. She handed him a tablet, and he began to draw what he'd seen. A few minutes later, they visited a neighbor, a man who really knows those woods. And they soon drove back to that spot on the road. Within the silence and the night, they found no trace of the creature. The neighbor says, I know he saw something, but I don't know what it was. Canfield told a story at high school earlier the last week. Some friends believe him and some have begun to tease him. One friend helped him with the sketch and others have come up with a name for the creature. Batsquatch.
Come on. Batsquatch.
Batsquatch. I'm really not into this stuff, Canfield says. It boggles my mind. It really, really does. Hardcore. I really can't explain it. It's weird, definitely weird. I don't like it. Usually stuff like this happens to someone else. This past week, I've spoken both with neighbors and with Canfield's family. I believe his story. I believe he saw something that night a week ago. I have no idea what he saw. I've spoken with experts on legends and creatures, and none knows of a being such as this. But I believe Brian Canfield. And I believe that we daily face so many real things fearful: drugs, gangs, AIDS, violence, divorce, poverty, Rwanda, Bosnia, tuberculosis, North Korea, and so on down the list. It's almost pleasant to consider a monster that no one can explain. Well, it's pleasant for the rest of us, perhaps, but not for Brian Canfield. It did happen. I'm willing to put my life on it, he says. I just have this picture in front of my head, the picture of it standing there. I can't get rid of it. It's just there. I kind of wish it didn't happen.
Oh, my God.
That is fucking Batsquatch, people.
We should have invited Mr. Canfield to this event.
We should have gotten, is Brian Canfield here?
Is Brian in the house? Oh, this guy stands
or
up
the
in the
guy
back.
who wrote that, C.R. Roberts.
That guy,
That's
Pulitzer.
the guy I want to meet.
Pulitzer Prize.
Pulitzer. Absolutely. Hard-hitting.
Yes. It sounds like it's from the 30s or something. The way the guy talks.
It's insane. It's really nuts. But he believed that. I love the fact that he didn't doubt the kid at all.
Yeah.
You know, he totally went with it. And I'll just give you a little bit more backstory on Batsquatch, if you're interested.
Dead silence.
Yeah, I know. March 27, 1980 was Mount St. Helens eruption, right? 10,000-foot plume of ash, earthquakes, eruptions, hugely destructive. And a week after this event was stories of this thing appearing, of this gigantic creature, huge. And there were different reports. It's 9 feet tall, it's 15 feet tall, its wings are 50-foot wingspan.
50
it's
feet.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, that's absurd.
Crazy. 14 years after that is when this happens. Brian Canfield, young Brian Canfield, sees it. There's other sightings. Butch Whitaker, a liquor store owner, sees Batsquatch flying next to him in his personal plane. While he's flying his personal plane, Batsquatch is flying with him.
Of course he is.
That's Butch Whitaker.
Butch.
Which makes me think I should open a liquor store so I can buy a fucking plane.
That's right.
I'm like, it's a pretty good liquor store.
I know. Oh, my God.
But then there's different things about maybe Butch Whitaker was just a hiker. Maybe he didn't actually, but he saw it. 1998, an anonymous trucker hauling logs in northern Oregon hits the Batsquatch.
Oh, really?
He says it's 15 feet tall with a purple nose, red eyes, and tiny wings.
Tiny wings.
2009, a group of hikers at Mount Shasta.
Always Mount Shasta.
Mount Shasta, which is a really sort of haunted, weird place. They see a creature that is, quote, stocky as Hulk Hogan with leathery wings. Hulk Hogan has leathery wings as well, I think. 50 feet wingspan, that's where that's from, end to end, face of a bat. And it flew out of a crevice in the mountain, supposedly. And other sightings, 2011, a guy, the pseudonymous Phoenix Tiraz, a guy named Phoenix Tiraz, was walking his dog in his yard. I don't know what that means. Quote, I saw...
who walks their dog
I don't
in
know.
their
And
yard?
the guy's name is Phoenix Tiraz, and he's walking his dog in his yard. So he gets anything that happens to him he deserves. Quote, I saw something flying in the sky. It had bat wings, and it was blue. It had a face similar to that. It had eyes glowing red, 9 feet tall. I watched it, and it just flew away. And April 14th in 2014, Archbishop Hoban High School in Akron, Ohio. Second period, somebody from...
Okay.
Everybody okay out there? Is that somebody from Akron? Second period Spanish class, they saw this thing fly by the window.
Batsquatch gets around.
Batsquatch gets around.
Batsquatch sounds a lot like the Mothman.
Yeah, very much so.
Right? You've heard of the Mothman, right? The red eyes, the whole thing.
The gigantic winged thing, which is weird because it's like a common thing that people see.
The other thing that's interesting about this story, well, several things. One is that you're so into it and it's from the 90s, but you were like shitting all over my 1990s story. But here's the thing that's interesting.
Wow, that's really true, isn't it? Wow.
This, you're like into it. I'm like, it's the 90s.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
But the other thing is that these things appear when... sorry. They appear when there's like sort of like a crisis in the environment or like... So you have, they have the volcano, but also like when there's wars, or there was that the bridge collapse, and then Mothman's there. There seems to be a correlation between like people having a difficult time, maybe like there's a depression or there's the Cold War, like tensions are rising, and then these weird cryptids seem to show up to distract people. Maybe I don't know.
No, that's interesting because the thing I was reading about Betty and Barney Hill actually talked a lot about that it was this kind of movement, it was kind of right around the time, I think, of the Kennedy assassination. And then this kind of slow slide and everything that sort of happens. And this is increasing thing about UFOs, but not just UFOs, the abduction thing and the kind of more menacing thing of them really increases as kind of erosion of faith in the government the same thing seems to be going on. It's true.
Yeah, so the monsters can be like a surrogate or like a projection of these other real social ills. You go through a pandemic and people are like freaking out, and there's a sense in which you can kind of personify that if you're a very imaginative person. And then there's also a way in which you can kind of distract yourself too by having these kinds of paranormal things increase. Ghost stories increase, monster stories, that kind of stuff.
Well, think about it too. You say that about like a pandemic and you think, I guess, the Black Death and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There must have been a ton of shit like this.
I would think so,
People
And there's
crazy things.
There's some evidence that they did a study on people who like horror films and like those prepper things, like sort of like movies about the apocalypse, and you're basically storing all this food in your basement. If you're into that kind of stuff, you generally tended to be doing better during the pandemic shutdown, because they ask you like, how are you sleeping? How's your depression? How are you doing? And fans of this horror were generally doing better off than people who don't like horror.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's kind of getting you ready for stuff.
Possibly.
You have a predisposition to paranoia, probably.
Yeah,
too.
maybe so.
That's me. Okay. That's interesting. That makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Some people think that horror is a kind of rehearsal, like for threats. No one's really going to get a zombie attack, but you might get attacked down some dark alley, so work it out while you're watching horror films.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's like, there's like a monster, and then the people in the horror film are like, let's go see what that noise was in the basement, So
That's just stupidity. That's got nothing to do with. That's just fucking stupid. Is what that is. You got another one over there, Professor?
I got another one. Okay. Actually, out of curiosity, how many people had heard of Batsquatch?
Oh.
Okay. All
People
right.
are very embarrassed to hold their hands up, aren't they?
Yeah, they're just like
This guy right down here was like but that was about 5 people, maybe? That's awesome.
That's
I'm
more
glad
than I
that people
thought.
have actually heard of it. Has anybody here, I'm just going to ask this question straight up. Has anybody here ever seen the Sasquatch? Wow.
Okay, there's some people.
Somebody?
We're going to have a Q&A session after.
Somebody just said they did?
I saw. Yeah, some guy's kind of like waving his hand.
I
We're
can't,
gonna find
again, it's
out.
people just kind of like,
Yeah.
interesting. I'm just so curious, you know? I mean, Steve really sort of believes.
Well,
in
let's
this.
not
Well, you
go
believe
that
in the
far.
possibility of it more than
Yes.
I do.
Yes.
Yes. For some reason, I believe in ghosts, but I think Sasquatch is ridiculous. But you really kind of.
You're on the wrong side of that, man.
I know you really
totally
kind
on
of.
the wrong side of that.
You entertain the possibility of it much more so.
I
than
do because we were flying up here actually, and I was poking him like on the plane. I'm like, look out the window, look at all this land where no one lives. That's where the Sasquatch could be living.
And I'm like,
Are
Steve,
you
I'm
with
trying
me?
to fucking sleep. Stop waking me up. No, but you were, and it's true. I mean, it's like there's a huge swaths of uninhabited forest. I still find it really hard to believe, though. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
I believe that Jane Goodall, who you may have heard of, the fine primatologist, has also left the door open for Sasquatch as a possibility.
She actually sort of subscribes to it. Really?
Well, she just says it's possible you could have an interbreeding primate that has basically not been detected. Sorry.
But that seems impossible to me. I mean, it's like, I know that they're discovering sort of species of insects and birds and things like that. Right, okay. Like I could see that. But like a 7-foot tall ape, it seems crazy to me that we'd miss that.
I'm sticking to it. I mean, okay, here's my theory is that coming across the Bering Land Bridge, we had Gigantopithecus blacki, which is a real giant ape that lived at the same time with Homo erectus, and they came across. They're living around here somewhere. And
Is this fact, or are you making this up?
No, this is my theory.
But did they think these things lived in Russia?
No, these things lived in Asia, in the Far East.
Okay.
Possibly in Russia too. And in fact, they would have lived in Russia to get across the land bridge. You see how my theory is really coming together?
Yes, it is. This is impressive.
But there is evidence for this thing, and I think that that's what we're seeing. Either that or just black bears, which are walking on their hind legs.
Okay, all right.
But here's one that people may be familiar with: Caddy, the sea monster. You people don't know your regional.
I know. What are you
cryptids.
people got to get
fuck
out of
is
the
wrong with
house
you?
for crying out loud?
I thought there'd like be a huge.
I know,
Caddy.
everybody. Caddy.
Jeez, okay, fine.
Nothing.
This is
Batsquatch.
this is spotted frequently in Puget Sound, and it is. They started seeing
Puget
it.
Sound, really?
Yes,
Like a stone's throw from here.
exactly. 1822, it was reported to be captured and dissected. This may be like a group of them, so we're gonna. It's not just the Loch Ness monster. This is a group of creatures, and they are described as having a snake-like body with a horse-like head.
And when is this being spotted? Like,
Well, the earliest ones are in the 1800s, but in 1911, a newspaper reporter says that they found one washed up on the shore, and then it's reported in 1913 of an 80-foot creature with a shaggy head, which looks like a horse. And then finally, Major Langley. I'm sure you're familiar with Major Langley's work.
Major Langley?
Major Langley, yes. In 1933, he reports a camel-faced 40-foot animal. The dimensions are changing quite a bit here. And then in 1937, off Vancouver, sightings of a body were found in the belly of a sperm whale. And there's some question that could be a giant squid. They could be misidentifying.
Sure.
But what I think is interesting about this creature is that many people have seen it, and it's not ominous. It just rises up and just stares at you.
Wow.
Like it comes up next to your boat and shit, and it just looks at you,
And then it goes
back.
under again.
That's Caddy.
So it doesn't attack, is what you're saying?
No, it doesn't
things like
attack.
that. Man, fascinating. So it's like a black-eyed child, just sort of like...
That's
not
why
unlike the black-eyed child. I say, fascinating. But they're more contemporary sightings of it and stuff, or no?
Yes, I believe the latest one is, I think in a way, because of the internet, you can start to unify and bond with people who have spotted these things.
Sure.
And there is now a Caddy Investigation Society here.
How's this spelled? Caddy? Like
Caddy, short for Cadborosaurus.
Huh. What does that mean? What is
I
that?
don't know. That sounds made up. The Cadborosaurus.
So it's some sort of holdover dinosaur thing.
I think that's the idea. But there is this tradition of the sea monster, and some of them turn out to be things like the giant squid, the kraken of like the northern Atlantic is probably the giant squid.
The kraken is the that's what the kraken is?
That's what most people will say, is that it's really the giant squid.
Oh, it's a huge squid. I wasn't clear what the kraken was, really.
Well, you see drawings of it, and the drawings look more like an octopus, but octopi don't get that big. So the giant squid, though, does get massive. And we have a whole episode on the giant squid.
That's true, we do. So, yeah, that's true.
But the oarfish, have you ever seen the oarfish or the ribbonfish? It is a gigantic, like imagine like a trout that's been stretched to 50 feet long.
Wow, literally 50 feet long.
And it's a very thin, almost like a snake, but it has like a fish body and then this weird head with a red plumage that comes off and it's for real.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not kidding. You guys have seen the oarfish, right? All right, a couple people here.
And is that an explanation maybe for Caddy, or is that an explanation
I think that would explain a lot of shit. Just general like sea monsters. That would be like a go-to.
A lot of shit. Yeah. Wow, I'd never heard of this one. Even I wish I'd known that when I lived here. I would have had something to do. I could have gone down
looking for Caddy.
Looked for Caddy. That's amazing. I'd never heard of that one. I like it. Thank you, sir. That's fantastic.
You're welcome.
I have another one, if everybody's still interested, if we still have people conscious in the audience. More of them? This is an interesting one. And I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you to help me define something here. The one that I have here is called Gumbaroo. Has anybody heard of this?
Gumbaroo? That's absurd.
I know. Nobody's heard of Gumbaroo either, huh? Well, you guys are learning something here today, aren't you?
Despite yourselves.
Gumbaroo is interesting because Gumbaroo seems to be folktale. And nobody's seen this thing. There's no verifiable sightings or eyewitness reports. It's a 19th and 20th century sort of folktale.
Okay.
Is what it is. It seems like.
Okay.
Right? So what's the difference? I mean, really? What's the difference?
Well, I think, if you had a folktale of a creature that was very mysterious and hidden, 90% of them are going to turn out to be just bullshit or like stories as part of the culture. But then maybe 10% is too high. Let's say 1% of them turn out to be a real thing. Like we talked about this before. Nobody believed in the platypus till they saw it.
Right.
They're like, that can't be real.
Yeah.
So some of them turn out to be, even though they started in folklore, they might be based on a real thing.
Okay. Well, Gumbaroo does not sound like a real thing. It really doesn't. And I'm going to read you the legend of Gumbaroo. This, unfortunately, was not written by C.R. Roberts.
Oh, come on.
No, I know. Unfortunately, sadly, this was written by William Thomas Cox in a book called Fearsome Creatures of the Lumber Woods, with a few desert and mountain beasts. It's available at bookstores now. No, this is written in like the 19th century. I think it's sort of late 19th century, early 20th century. And basically this thing is a kind of lumberjack myth. And it seems to mostly be around here. Here's the little passage from Creatures of the Lumber Woods by William Thomas Cox. In the foggy region along the Pacific coast from Gray's Harbor to Humboldt Bay, there ranges a kind of creature that has caused much annoyance in the lumber woods. This is the Gumbaroo, which luckily is so rare that only once in a great while is one seen. It is believed to remain in hiding most of the time in the base of enormous burned-out cedar trees, from where it sallies forth occasionally on frightful marauding expeditions. During these periods of activity, the beast is always hungry and devours anything it can find that looks like food. A whole horse may be eaten at one sitting, distending the gumbaroo out of all proportions, but failing to appease its hunger or cause it the slightest discomfort. That happens to me when I eat an entire horse as well. The specimens seen are reported to have been coal black, but that may have been due to their being besmirched with charred wood. In size, the beast corresponds closely to a black bear, for which it might be mistaken, only for the fact that the gumbaroo is almost hairless. To be sure, it has prominent eyebrows and some long bristly hairs on its chin, but the body is smooth, tough, and shiny, and bears not even a wrinkle.
This is disturbing.
I know. It's a very strange creature. The animal is a tireless traveler when looking for food, but it is not swift in its movements, and it becomes annoyed by the presence of enemies. The latter characteristic is easily accounted for by the fact that no animal within its range has ever been successful. Oh, I see. Oh, fuck it. I'm reading this all wrong. Doesn't matter. Whatever strikes the beast bounds off with the same...
Where's your research, man?
My reading comprehension level has just plummeted. My IQ, everybody, you're seeing in real time my IQ plummet. All right, here, let me do this again. The latter characteristic is easily accounted for by the fact that, it is not annoyed to the slightest degree by the presence of enemies. The latter characteristic is easily accounted for by the fact that no other animal within its range has ever found a successful method of attacking a gumbaroo or a vulnerable spot in its anatomy. Thank you. See, now it's clear. Whatever strikes the beast bounds off with the same force. Its elastic hide hurls back with equal ease the charging elk and the wrathy hornet. A rock thrown at the creature bounds back at whoever threw it, and a bullet shot against its hide is sure to strike the hunter between the eyes. It is believed that the scarcity of gumbaroos is due to their combustible character and the prevalence of forest fires. The animal burns like celluloid with explosive force.
This is great.
It's fucking crazy. Frequently during and after a forest fire in the heavy cedar near Coos Bay, woodmen have insisted that they heard loud reports, quite unlike the sound of falling trees, and detected the smell of burning rubber in the air. So this fucking thing is like a hairless rubber bear. And these guys saw it. The most confusing thing about this is this is clearly very confusing because I got very confused reading it. What I couldn't figure out, and there's lots of different sort of takes on this, is that it seems to cause fires. When it gets enraged, it explodes and causes a fire. It also seems like the only way to kill it is to set fire to it, and it will explode, which makes no sense because then you're going to set a forest fire, right? Or what happens is there's a fire and these things start blowing up all over the place. So it's not clear to me what the deal is, but bottom line is the thing is combustible.
The gumbaroo is combustible.
It's crazy.
There is actually...
And so it's a legendary creature. Nobody's ever seen this thing. But it's an interesting one because it's like, is it there as an explanation for forest fires solely?
It's interesting.
You know?
Yeah, a lot of these creatures can be used as a way of explaining a natural phenomenon.
Right.
But that one is really weird, like
really
a rubber bear. That's just bizarre.
It's really bizarre.
The gumbaroo.
The gumbaroo. It's very strange.
There's actually a series of writings that have sort of been attributed to Aristotle. They're called Marvelous Things Said and Heard. And in it, he describes something called the bonacon. And the bonacon sounds a lot like the gumbaroo, but with the additional defensive mechanism of shooting a burning acid from its ass. Like, that will shoot like 20 feet into the air. And that's an ancient source. That's Aristotle,
That's
everybody.
Aristotle, for crying out loud.
You learned
that's
something.
That's got to be fact, right?
That's fact.
Wait a second. So what's it called?
The bonacon.
The bonacon, and this is in this thing that Aristotle supposedly wrote. Aren't there sort of beetles and bugs that sort of blow acid out their butts and can like...
I believe there are.
So that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about something like
much
this.
bigger.
Much bigger. Very strange. Yeah, this one is weird, you know?
It is.
It's a very weird one. And
it's funny. There are like certain legends connected with logging and lumber sort of industry. Like in Wisconsin, there's the hodag, which is way up in northern Wisconsin, right? Somebody knows the hodag.
Yeah.
And it's
Somebody
similar.
knows the hodag. They don't know any of these bizarre
They don't know
things, but they know
they're
the
local
hodag.
people, but they know
That's amazing.
It's bizarre.
And the hodag is what?
Well, it's also sounds a little bit like this, but it looks sort of like a bear, but like a lion. And this guy put one on display at the fair, and people would go to see it.
Oh, so he claimed to have actually killed one of these
claimed to have
things.
killed one.
Oh, and it's just this menacing thing that lives in the woods.
Yeah, but then when basically the word started to get out, somebody at the New York Times, this is like in the 1890s or something. Someone in a New York newspaper was like, "Oh, we need to go and see what this is." And that's finally when the guy was like, "I got to confess, I'm bullshitting. I made this up." But what he was doing was he was saying, "We can't keep like clear cutting this old growth forest. We need to have a tourism industry here." And so he was trying to invent a tourism industry. And this is funny because the Mothman has become a tourism industry.
Yeah.
You need to get the Gumbaroo into the
you guys
tourism
need to get on
industry
top
here.
of things. Seattle Chamber of Commerce needs to get on top of Caddy and all this stuff.
The Gumbaroo?
That's really interesting. Well, I think that's true of a lot of these things. I mean,
Yeah.
Roswell and stuff like
Look
that.
at Loch Ness Monster.
Sure, and you go up there and it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's out of control there. I remember going there when I was about 9 years old, and there really wasn't a whole lot of that kind of stuff. And then I went there not too long ago, and it's crazy what there is now.
You can buy like all kinds of trinkets and stuff.
I mean, it's
with
just
Loch Ness.
sustaining the whole area.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy.
Bus tours and all that stuff.
Everything, and like Roswell's the same thing.
So that's a very interesting point because I went there to Loch Ness. You went there recently. So many people here probably have gone there. What are we doing? Like, we're interested in it. Most of us don't really believe it. We think there's a possibility, but it's fun to go there. Like, it's a strange thing.
It's a really strange thing.
You organize your life around something that doesn't exist. Oh, this sounds like religion, actually. Sorry. Now I understand it.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I went there when I was 9, convinced I was going to see it. And I sort of sat on the shores of Loch Ness with a camera for hours.
That sounds sad.
No, it wasn't sad at all, man. It was awesome. And hours I sat there, yeah. And my mother was just patiently sitting there while I sat there, completely convinced I was going to see this thing. Never did.
Do you believe in it?
The Loch Ness Monster?
Yeah.
That one I think I have a little bit more tolerance for because I feel like the depths of the ocean and water and things that thing can hide better. You know, it really can sort of disappear and not necessarily be something you're going to see that much. And I think about all the crazy things, like I mean, you're saying, the giant squid or whatever, these bananas things that are in deep
in the
parts of
water.
the ocean. You know,
We don't know that much about the
We
ocean.
really don't. And I mean, there's just crazy shit down there.
Well, I thought they they didn't drag the lock, but they would shoot sonar down it as they went across it and didn't see anything.
suppose so. I mean, I think they've done a lot of stuff. But then every now and then you hear that they detect some massive thing that's down there.
And you could have a cave. You could live in a cave.
You could live in a cave.
Live in a
you know,
cave.
I mean, any number of things. You know, so
There is a very high degree of eel DNA in Loch Ness. In the
Right.
loch, yes.
But the eels get to be that big.
I think the moray eel might be the biggest eel, and maybe I think 10 feet might be the biggest. I'm totally making this up.
Yeah.
But I think 10 feet is the moray eel.
Amazing.
That it's not anywhere close to the Loch Ness Monster. So, but that's what some people are suggesting. Maybe it's a gigantic eel, or maybe you're seeing a bunch of eel or something like that.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Fascinating.
Do you have any more? Or you?
There is actually a lake creature.
A what?
There is a lake creature called Devil's Lake Monster.
Okay.
Now
That's
this
around
is-
here?
Well,
Nobody here is going to know.
No, they're not
so
going to
it's
know.
like-
What is it? Yeah, it's right down the street, everybody. You don't know. This is also in the, this is called the Madei Wakan in the Sioux language, which means mystery or bad spirit. And it is an unknown aquatic creature that is said to reside in the depths of Devil's Lake in Oregon. Some say that this octopus-like beast was responsible for an untold number of deaths.
Wow.
But the Nakota Indians tell a tale about a struggling creature which is uncannily similar to the allegedly extinct plesiosaur. What's weird about this thing is that it's a gigantic octopus,
Right.
but it's shaggy. It has hair on it.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, that seems very
There's no
disturbing.
such thing as a hairy octopus.
I know,
otherwise,
that's
is there?
all wrong.
Okay.
But what's interesting about these two is that if you look at the ancient world, these sea creatures, like if it could be like the Leviathan from the Bible, or it could be the Kraken, or some of these other. There's a creature from the Greek tradition, the Ketos is a sea monster. They're like symbols of chaos. So you think about, I think Odysseus has to get between the Scylla and the Charybdis.
Yeah.
Right? So we've always used these sea creatures as like a sign of chaos.
Leviathan is what, though? We don't really know what that is, or behemoth and stuff like that. We don't know what they are. They're just named, but they're not a thing. I mean, Leviathan comes to me in a whale, but is that what it is?
Well, it's mentioned a couple of different times in different books of the Bible, and it's described slightly different in all the cases. I think the behemoth is traditionally a land creature, a giant land creature, and the Leviathan is a sea creature.
I feel like the behemoth is likened to a hippopotamus.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Which doesn't seem terribly scary, but it's like...
Oh, they kill a lot of people.
Do they really?
Oh, my God.
Hippopotamuses?
Yes. In Africa, the most deadly creature is the hippo, which is funny because they look
true?
ridiculous. Yeah.
Really? Is that right?
All right, back me up here.
You all know that.
Oh, yeah. They don't know
everybody was like, oh, yeah.
Everybody's head is like shaking.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, what the fuck? Really? Everybody's watching Wild Kingdom here. That's amazing. I didn't know that they were so vicious. I guess they're big, aren't they?
They're huge.
Right.
And they can be very aggressive.
Do they have a lot of teeth? Because I always think they just are like
only need a
cartoon
couple.
hippopotamus.
Yeah.
That's like 4 teeth.
That's all you need, man.
Wow, amazing.
No, they can totally massacre. There's actually a story again, when Alexander writes back to Aristotle, he says, we're over here in India, and we're crossing a river, and these crazy things come out and killed all the men. And they were hippos, because he describes them, and it's pretty clear they were hippos.
Holy cow. Yeah. So Alexander's army is fighting an army of hippos.
Exactly.
Wow, that's insane. I didn't know that. That's
you
insane.
heard it here.
That's amazing. But what is there more about this thing? The Devil's
just
Lake
says,
monster?
One of the earliest legends involving the creature of Devil's Lake revolves around a Native American Indian chief who assembled an expedition of young warriors to go on a late-night hunting trip on the fauna-fertile lands across the lake. The full moon reflected off the night-blackened waters. This sounds like it was written by your man.
Yeah, I know. I think C.R. Roberts reporting.
As the young men and their leaders slipped the canoe, the water, and began their late-night trek, suddenly a flurry of tentacles ripped through the surf, capsizing the canoe and pulling the thrashing, terrified men beneath the brackish water. Although no one survived this ill-fated expedition, their screams alerted fellow tribesmen who rushed onto the beach and were able to bear witness to this horrific event in grisly detail due to the moon's lingering glow.
Wow.
The surviving warriors of the tribe, in order to pay homage to their fallen brethren, as well as to appease what they believed to be a demon of the lake, held a festival every year during which gifts and animal sacrifices were thrown into the water.
Oh, wow. But this is a thing that has remained fairly legendary. People aren't seeing this thing anymore.
There are apparently other this is weird because there's a Devil's Lake in Wisconsin and people swear there are monsters in that too.
Hairy octopi?
Well, I don't know about that. That seems unique to this area.
I'm just asking. Okay. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Weird that an octopus, there's no lake octopi, or there's no such thing as that, right? It's like a saltwater thing. Right?
Okay, here's the thing. We did an interview with an octopus specialist.
We did.
A whole episode.
He was a very patient man.
We should have asked him this question.
Because we were doing shit like this to that guy.
That was hilarious.
He was a
like,
very
what did
patient
I get into
man. He was
here?
a lovely, lovely patient man.
Yeah. But there's a story of in Pliny the Elder, I think, or Pliny the Younger, I don't remember.
And he was sort of a naturalist.
Yeah, natural historian
in the Roman world.
Period. He describes a gigantic octopus that these guys are fighting, and it's up in a tree. Yeah, and they're fighting it, and they burst it open, and some horrible, noxious, like, sludge comes onto everybody. Wow. And I remember laughing, thinking, like, how stupid are these people? And then I read that octopus can just get up and walk across from one body of water to another, and they have been known to climb trees.
Really?
Just temporarily to get from one place to another. So the joke was on me.
It sure was. You heard it here, folks. The mighty tree octopus. That's incredible. Wow. Well, on that note, No, I usually I think I'm out of my creatures.
Well, there's so many cryptids.
There are.
We're trying to basically sort of keep it close to the ones you don't know.
Yeah. Thank you very much
thank
for
you.
that, actually. Thank you. And thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
It was really awesome. I hope you guys had fun. Thanks a lot, guys.
That was such a fun one. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for our live Q&A that'll be dropping very soon. In the meantime, wag on weirdos. Chinwag is a production of Treefort Media and Touchy Feely Films, hosted and executive produced by Paul Giamatti and Stephen Asma. Executive producers for Treefort are Kelly Garner and Lisa Ammerman. Dan Carey is executive producer for Touchy Feely. Our series producer is Rachel Whitley Bernstein, with additional producing by Mary Chulenza. Original theme music by Luke Top, with additional music by Via Mardot. Oscar Guido is our executive in charge of production. Tom Monahan is head of audio for Treefort. Our associate producer is Aidan Brooks. Audio production supervision by Jared Brom and Matt Dyson. Editing and mixing by Matt Dyson. Lastly, for more information, go to chinwagpod.fm and find us on Instagram or TikTok at chinwagpod or on Twitter at chinwag_pod.